networker is like a great interviewer.
I'm huge on authenticity, guys. It's a big part of my message.
Claim your local listings and don't get caught paying someone for your local listing.
If you want to be successful, you got to do 6 things 1,000 times, not 1,000 things 6 times.
And when in doubt, give to other people and don't expect anything in return. But in giving to other people and helping them, it almost always comes back.
It's using the power of partnership, creating trusted partner networks to work with you to make your company be an offer more than just.
So they've done 90% of the work. It's your job to do the last 10%.
All right,
to meet
got
them
it
in the
on.
middle.
You guys
Don't
ready?
let the fear of losing
All right,
be
we're ready to
greater
go
than the
in
excitement
3,
of winning.
2, 1.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Ask Valor Masterminds podcast, brought to you by A Advanced Septic Services and CR Gutters. My name is Galen.
I'm Joe.
I'm coming at you virtually live from the BD Local Studios in Tacoma, Washington. So, Joe, for our new listeners and viewers tuning in, thanks for tuning in. But tell us how our podcast came to be.
Absolutely. So it first started out as a private Facebook group page, and the purpose was to bring businesses together to kind of communicate and talk with one another, ask questions, share tips, that sort of thing. And from that, it kind of morphed into a podcast where we bring on different guest speakers to talk about different topics, all as it relates to business in some form or fashion.
Awesome. So our last episode, talking about how everything relates to business, we were lucky to have Bob Berg on, the Go-Giver. And what was one of there are a lot of takeaways that we had, but what was one of the things that you took away most from our last episode?
It's something that he said kind of in the Bob Berg Unplugged section of the podcast, which was keep learning, keep reading, keep watching videos and going to seminars. So continue your learning process. And then trust is a deal breaker for people. So build it and earn it with people and just make sure you're always providing value.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the highlights of our podcast that he was able to come on, national best-selling author. I think the Go-Giver sold over 1 million books, but just a lot of great information and insight he provided. So, but let's get going. So our guest, we're lucky to have our own Mick Herdier join us. So thanks, Mick, for joining our podcast. So Joe, give a formal intro to our own Mick Herdier, please.
Sure. So I'm going to just read it straight from his LinkedIn stuff. So corporate sales and IT software professional with experience in both the business to consumer and business to business backgrounds. This experience coupled with an understanding of SEO, search engine marketing, and internet marketing and IT hardware gives him a unique background that enables him to be successful in sales and more technical requirements. Sales management experience has been garnered from time as a sales rep all the way up to executive level sales training and management. In addition to that type of experience, there has been consistent leadership and experience gained through his time with the U.S. Marine Corps. Thank you for your service. He is the founder of Valor Marketing, and he is a partner with Advanced Wastewater Promotions. So for everyone, welcome Mick to our podcast.
Thanks, Frank. All right. So before we kind of get going into the meat and potatoes of our podcast, so our Valor Cares promotion, we have our new logo we launched on the graphic, as you'll see, but give our listeners and viewers a little bit of insight into our Valor Cares promotion that we're so proud of.
Absolutely. So this one started probably in April when the pandemic kind of first started and people working from home and some businesses were closing. And so we wanted to figure out a way to give back to businesses locally here in Washington. And as it grew kind of just nationwide. And so our way in doing that is to give away a free website build to a business. It's about a $2,500 value. And really, a website is the foundation for every single business. So businesses that either didn't have one, had one that was very outdated, had one that their uncle's brother's best friend's nephew that lived in the basement built for them and never had access to it. So those are the types of businesses. And so we've been giving away these free website builds, and all of the businesses that are chosen winners are just so appreciative that they can have a website that represents their business.
And speaking of nationwide coverage or like people participating, one of our most recent winners came all the way from Pennsylvania. So on the flip side of the country, from the West Coast to the East Coast, we're able to reward Lisa Cassidy Physical Therapy, a website. So just proud of our promotion. Now we come to the part of our podcast, our A Advanced Septic Pump You Up quote of the day. So today's topic is SEO, Google core update changes. There's a lot of nerdy topics, but we'll kind of simplify it through our head nerd. But this first one, and Mick, I'll get your thought on it, from Rand Fishkin. Better content is outweighing more content. So as it relates to websites, we come across websites that just have a lot of different pages that do a lot of different things. Talk to us more about this specific quote of better content is outweighing more content.
So as it relates to content, everything is built around one word, and that word is being relevant or relevant. So you'll come across websites where it's obviously stuffed with just words. So it's got page after page after page of stuff that doesn't really apply to or is applicable to the actual user of the site. It's more just stuffed content or extra words in hopes that as Google sees that content, that it will help them. And Google's kind of pushed away from that and is looking for actual information on websites or anywhere on the internet, actually, in websites, images, videos, that's succinct, it's relevant to what a consumer is looking for or a business is looking for, and it's valuable. So make sure that that content that you're building is not just relevant, but also valuable to whoever would be seeing it.
Awesome. So the second quote I'll read to you, then again, get your thought or two. And Joe, feel free to chime in. So Google only loves you when everyone else loves you first. So we know being on the first page of Google is kind of the revered position, right? That's why businesses would hire a company like us to get them there. But what does that mean? So if I'm new, a business starting out, or maybe an established business that doesn't have a strong web presence, why does Google only love me when everyone else loves me first? What kind of break that down for us, please?
So obviously, going back to what I just said earlier, being relevant. The more relevant you are, the more Google wants to send traffic to you. A few years back, it seems like ages ago, but it was probably less than a decade, there were things like city search or local search. They were localized search engines. And those localized search engines, Google wasn't doing organic search very well. And they were losing traffic to local search engines. And the reason they were losing that is because they weren't relevant to what a consumer was looking for or was interested in. So it goes back to being relevant. When the Google recognizes that you are relevant, Google at that point wants to push traffic to you. Because that relevancy makes customers more sticky for Google itself.
Awesome. So now we come to our CR Gutters Did You Know segment. So there's a lot of terms that we're hearing in the marketplace, and Mick's here to kind of explain everything. So this is the kind of term, Google core updates. What are they? So when someone says that, when a customer we talk to or a prospect we talk to, we know that they're reading stuff that they may not understand. But what is a Google core update? Just for everyone, kind of our listeners and viewers out there. Okay.
So, and this is going to be kind of a long-winded answer, and there's no way to avoid that. So I apologize in advance. Here's what you have to understand first. Everything that shows up in the organic section, I'm not talking about the ads at the top or in the map section, even though the map section is now starting to bleed over into organic rankings a little bit. But if we just take apart the organic rankings that you see on the first page of Google, they're incredibly valuable. Obviously, if you have a business, you want to show up there for a number of reasons. But how does a business show up there? What makes Google choose your website over your competitor's website? Or why is your competitor, who you might think is terrible at what they do, why is your competitor showing up higher than you do? So Google created an algorithm, and the algorithm is based on a million different, and a million might be a stretch. It might be a slight exaggeration, but it's not that far off. There are just a ton of different reasons why a website will show up organically above another. And sometimes you'll look at the website and one website looks nicer than the other, and the one that looks nicer is lower ranking than the one that looks terrible. So it's not just about how a website looks, although Google has really focused on lately the user experience on websites. So they want users to have a good experience when they go to any website, not just Google related stuff. So all of those factors, or as we like to call them, ranking factors, go into an algorithm that determines who shows up above other people. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Google's always changing that algorithm. There are small updates, and they can come out on a daily basis, sometimes multiple times in a day. And then we have what we call core updates, where Google looks at something that's happening for users on Google or the internet in general, and they say, what can we do to make the user experience more beneficial to the user that also and benefits Google? Google likes to say that they only do things that benefit the user, but ultimately it's a business, so they want to make sure it also benefits them. So these core updates, just imagine them as major renovations, whereas you might hang a picture in your living room and you might put in a new table. That would be a daily update to the algorithm. A core update to an algorithm is something you have to imagine as a much bigger event, where maybe you're ripping out walls and replacing, putting in new beams, like you're doing a full renovation. Or
So in light of the weather, would that be like installing a central air conditioning system in a house where you just had a regular, but that's kind of a core update that benefits everything, right?
Yes.
I mean, we just came off 114 degree heat, so that may be a metaphor people could relate to, right?
Exactly. So it's a core update is something that in the industry, we all tend to pay, or the good guys tend to pay a lot more attention to. Not that we don't pay attention to the daily updates, but if you try to chase those all down, you would end up making yourself dizzy.
Right. So it's a lot of work is what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah. And
all right.
You never get it right. How you respond, you think you're going to have a plan for it, you never get it right.
Well, you mentioned this, and I'll ask it quickly, asking for a quick answer, but good guys versus bad guys. So, we're in marketing, so there are companies that aren't the best integrity-wise. Quick tip for everyone there. What's one clue that you're not working with a good guy for if you're hiring an SEO company? And I'm not trying to plug Valor, but just in general, people get duped on getting calls blown up with, oh, I could get you on the first page of Google. What are 1 or 2 things you could give our listeners, something just to keep in the back of their mind when they're getting solicited?
So I can't do one thing. I can do a couple quick things.
All right.
One, if someone calls you up and they have like a crazy low number, like for $200 a month, I can make you show up on the first page of Google. That's the fastest and easiest way to get screwed over for probably a long-term contract on $200. And what they're doing is, because most people don't know, if you're a plumber, you're probably really good at being a plumber. That's your job. That's what you do. If you're a dentist, you focus on being a dentist. So let's pretend I'm one of the bad guys. I give you a call. You're a plumber. I say, hey, I can make you show up on the first page of Google right now. It's $200 a month and I'll get it done for you. What they're doing is in essence, they're fishing for you. So they get you on the hook for $200 a month, and then they claim your map listing. So technically, they have done what they said they were going to do. They got you on the first page of Google. So you look at the map section, you're showing up on the first page of Google, and if you don't know better, you think you're paying for SEO. So it's really easy for people in our industry to use words to confuse people or to make them believe something's happening that's not happening. Claiming a map listing takes 10 to 15 minutes. Show up there, it's free. So I can then turn around and make you feel good about showing up on the first page of Google. You go and tell your friends and other business friends that, hey, I show up on the first page of Google. But in reality, that's not SEO and you've been screwed over. At the end of the day, when it comes to SEO, anybody that tells you that they do SEO, you should probably not believe them. I would say that 95% of the people that say they do SEO, I automatically assume that they're a liar until they prove otherwise. You're looking for reporting, you're looking for references. Like, what kind of reporting are they going to give you? Do they have actual businesses that are their clients that you can call and they can say, they've had this effect on my business? And that's funny to say because in our company, we do many things, but what I focus on is the SEO portion of our business. And I tell people that all the time. You should never trust anybody, not even me. Go check my references and look at my report. Look for proof.
So since we've been talking about SEO, can you explain what SEO is?
Yeah, probably a good idea. So on the first page of Google, there are 3 places that you can potentially show up. And I'm using, in this, to answer this, I'm going to use Google in a generic form. So for us, SEO applies to Google, Bing, and Yahoo. Google makes up about 70 to 75% of market share, but Bing and Yahoo make up another 30% together. So, and they all basically kind of work the same way. On the first page of Google, you have the ads, and they show up at the top of Google, and sometimes there's ones on the bottom, 1 or 2. And then you have the map rankings. The map rankings are typically the section in the middle. Sometimes the organic results will show up, 1 or 2 organic results will show up. Then you get the map section and then the rest of the organic rankings. There's typically 5 to 7 map listing businesses. There's 4 businesses that show up in the ads. And then there's 10 organic rankings. If you count on the first page of Google and there's only 8 organic rankings, that means 2 of those organic rankings got sucked up into the map section. But the organic rankings are those areas that you technically, when people say you don't pay for them, depending on the market that you're in and the industry you're in, you're probably going to have to pay some company to make you show up above your competition. But organic means that you have a website that Google has crawled or has categorized in such a way that they find you to be relevant and they make you show up on the first page of Google. A great example of that is we have a septic company. I think they're one of the sponsors of this show, who have 68 competitors in their market. And if you step back and think about that, 68 competitors, and there's only 10 positions on the first page of Google. You have to work to show up above them. So that organic ranking is not the ads, not the map section, but the true organic rankings.
So the holistic SEO effect, kind of going back on the Google core updates, and then just as we've seen with some of our customers, without naming them, some keywords change, but then because of the core algorithm, like related keywords, your core keywords may drop, but other keywords that are related to that may lift up. Can you kind of talk about that with like the SEO effect of keywords and related keywords as businesses show up for their desired keyword and maybe some relatable keywords? Yeah.
So something that's interesting. I'm going to use roofing as an example. We have quite a few clients in the roofing industry. And when you have lots of customers that kind of have the same types of keywords, we only work with 1 client per market per industry for SEO. But what happens is, let's say I have clients spread all over the country in roofing. And so we basically know the certain keywords that consumers are searching for based on traffic patterns. So I'm going to use roofing. In roofing, we had a bump in the last core update. We had a bump in certain keywords like roofers or roofers near me. So when a consumer would go search for a roofer or a roofer near me, on the core update, we actually got a bump on that keyword, which was wonderful. But we actually went down on keyword rankings across all of these customers, across all of these roofers. We were able to see that we went up for one of the best keywords, and one of our top 4 keywords roofing contractor, we actually went down. Now, why would that happen? Nothing changed across all of those websites. Our content didn't change dramatically. Our images didn't change dramatically. We didn't change the videos out or anything like that. But for that particular keyword grouping, we went down. What we can guess, and remember, when I'm talking about algorithm updates or core updates, we're guessing. No one knows. No one except people, very few people at Google know. So this is our guess. So for me to purport to be some sort of algorithm expert is like saying I'm an expert in why birds
Astrophysics.
Yeah, it's not gonna. No one's like. There could be an expert in astrophysics, but why a bird decided to fly left versus right, it'd probably be hard to say that you're that kind of expert.
But it's a form of like predictive analytics, like
Yeah.
you're getting the data, and then like you guess trends, right, of different things. Could be season, could be, well, you know, obviously the pandemic affected people's behavior on search, so that had something to play with. Searching for stuff near me as opposed to people going to things. So these are the kind of things subtly that you and the team or SEO companies kind of try to mitigate and guess, like, all right, let me go this direction. Or it's like what we say is like you're throwing darts on the board, and what sticks one month may not stick the next month, right? As
What sticks one week may not stick the next, which is strange. And I think it's important to understand why. Why, a question that I don't ever hear people ask, why does Google have an algorithm? Why do they change it so much? Ask that question because it really helps you understand. And don't get me wrong, we make a tremendous amount of, a big portion of our business is based on what Google does or doesn't do. In many respects, I'm not a Google fan though. But in this respect, I have a lot of respect for why Google does their algorithm updates. If anybody could narrow down on exactly what Google was looking for, it would give them such an advantage that it would actually be dangerous to Google and other businesses. SEO is the great equalizer. I can take a little tiny company and make them show up organically above the big guy. As long as I'm doing my best to monitor and be up to date with Google's algorithm, I can take the little guy and make him show up organically above the big guy. So Google is trying, part of the reason that these algorithm updates happen and happen so frequently is Google doesn't want anybody to be 100%. Google does not want anybody to be zeroed in on it. A few years ago, there were some reports that were coming out where it seemed that inside of Google itself, there were algorithm updates that were coming from different portions of Google. So Google had one group inside of Google that was saying, we want this. Another part of another group inside of Google was saying, we want something completely different. And they were opposite of each other. So Google on purpose makes it to where it's difficult. It's not easy. And they're trying to get mostly people to concentrate on having a good user experience and the content being relevant. Where you win, like in a market where you might have 68 competitors, where you win is paying attention to those small updates. And that's what makes it a super competitive and difficult thing to do. Google wants it to be difficult. They don't want anyone to be zeroed in on it.
Can you explain the different types of website platforms there are and which ones you can and which one you can't do SEO and why that is?
Yeah. So inside of our own organization, we have had at times software developers who we ask to build a website in WordPress. And asking a software developer to build a website inside of WordPress is akin to or similar to asking a doctor to go back to kindergarten. They get irritated and frustrated. And as I like to say, my ego does not write me a paycheck. The reason we use WordPress is Google seems to have, they really, really like WordPress. And if you step back and look at the sum total of the internet, almost half of the internet is built on WordPress. Half of the websites on the internet are built on WordPress. So that's important to understand. If you're trying to show up, if being relevant on Google is important to your business, it should be important to you to look at what Google likes. And the way WordPress is built, Google knows how to crawl those websites. Google knows everything. Google knows where everything's at. So when they crawl it, it's much easier to show up. So internally, we try to use WordPress almost all of the time inside of our own company, just because we know Google likes it. And proof of that is Google used to send one of their executives flying around the planet talking about WordPress. Sometimes clients come to us and they don't have a website built in WordPress. An example of this would be Wix. I have nothing against Wix. I think they're a great platform. Unfortunately, I can't get full back-end access to Wix. Wix won't give us that. So if you have a business, if you're like a plumber, or you're a roofer, or you're a dentist, or you're a plastic surgeon, anything like that, where being relevant and you're going to have to compete to show up on the first page of Google organically, you probably should not use Wix, because you're going to want to be able to do SEO, and you're going to be prevented. Not because Wix is a bad company or they're doing anything wrong. It's just, and Wix likes to say, oh, we give you the tools to do SEO yourself. But the tools that they have, you have to step back and think about it, are built for everyone to use. So there's no way to dial in, and it's a big system. So take that big system. I don't have back-end access to it. I have to work inside of those parameters that they give us access to. And Google pushes out an algorithm update. And I don't have immediate ability to go in and make adjustments or changes to that. I've already lost the game. I'm already behind. So there's Wix, there's Squarespace. There's a couple others out there that if you need back-end access to your website for the purposes of doing SEO, you should not use those. Now, we have people that try to come to us to do business. Examples of that, and it frustrates me. It makes me angry because they're being lied to and they're being sold products that they shouldn't be sold. An example of that, dry cleaners. If a dry cleaner comes to us and they say they want a website, we first will push them towards Squarespace or Wix. It's a very localized business. It's something that you're typically going to do in your own neighborhood. You probably don't need a website from us. If you want a really nice one and you insist on it, great. But you don't need to do SEO. And it's shocking how many times we come across dry cleaners who are being charged $800,000 a month for SEO for services that aren't really going to impact their business, except in a negative way, because they're putting out that capital for something that they don't need. It's not good. So if you have a localized business, you've got a little coffee shop, you've got a little diner, you've got a dry cleaner, those are the times and places where you use a different platform that you don't necessarily need back-end access to, because for someone like us to try and sell you SEO would be bad.
Well, those platforms are really, like you said, it's simple, it's more drag and drop. So the good of it is it's easy for someone to create a web presence that just doesn't show up outside of their area where they would need something more robust. But like you said, there's hundreds, probably more like thousands, maybe more than that, of websites out there that's a good fit for that business. But then for not every business needs SEO or to hire a company like us, right?
Right.
And that's where you would need a more robust platform and everything. So
just if you know that you need full back-end access to your website, you should not use those platforms. If you know that you have a competitive environment, that you're going to need to be able to gain back-end access for the purposes of SEO, do not use those platforms. If you know, on the other hand, that you're a very localized business, you're a little coffee shop, you're a little diner, you're a dry cleaner, you're whatever that is, a simple website and claim your map listing. And we'll help you do that for free, happily.
So real quick, just wrapping up, Q image 12. So let's say regardless of business, people on Wix, Squarespace, WordPress, whatever, mostly for the people managing their own websites, SEO tips for everyday businesses. So for everyone out there, I want them to leave with maybe one or two nuggets that you could share with them. Are there some good practices that apply to all kind of platforms of websites that people could do when they build their website or get it updated?
Yes. So number one, and I it's shocking to this day how many people don't do it. The first step is to claim all of your local listings, no matter what kind of platform you will have. And a local listing is free. You don't have to pay anybody for it. There are software platforms out there that will make you show up on all of those listings that you can manage, and it's awesome and it's cheap and it makes it a lot easier. So if you want to do it that way, great, pay a little bit, but you can do that first. That's step one. But also keep in mind, you can do it for free. Claim your Google Map listing first. Make sure you've done that. That's step one after you have a website. Another thing, if you're going to do a video, use YouTube. Remember, Google owns YouTube. And one of those ranking factors is Google wants to see what kind of content you're putting out. If you're going to create a video for your business, any kind of video, use YouTube and make sure that YouTube player is put into your website so that when someone goes to your website, if they want to know more and they can click a video, make sure that video is built in YouTube. And then 3, make sure you have decent content. How many times do you go to a website and they've got maybe 2 sentences, a couple of pictures? Spend the time. Spend a few $100 and get a photographer to come out, get some pictures in there. Make sure those pictures are tagged. Write out a little bit about what makes you different. You're a plumber and this is the area you serve. Make sure to tell people, here's my service area. Here are the products and services that I represent and do. And make sure that there's a page that's relevant to each thing that you do. If you do water heaters, you want a page about water heaters. If you do drain cleaning, make sure you have a page about drain cleaning. Make sure that each part of your business that is represented on that page, and tell people about how you can help them or serve them. And then make sure to always repeat, here's my service area. So Google can see, oh, this guy does water heaters, or this is a dentist that does full dentures or caps or whatever it is. So that Google, as they crawl that, they have a very clear picture of who you are, what you do, and the areas that you service.
Because how many times have we seen, between the 3 of us, businesses who say they do something and it doesn't show on their website. So if it doesn't show on their website, people assume they don't do it. And it's a lost opportunity, right?
Right. And Google uses software called Spider, SPDR, to crawl a website. And they're looking for the answers to 3 questions. Who are you? What do you do? And what is your service area? Make sure that your content keeps saying that and is very clear, so that as that software from Google is crawling and categorizing your website, Google knows exactly where to put it. Remember, think back to when you were a kid. When you went to elementary school, you had to learn how to use the library, the decimal system, right? The Dewey Decimal System. So you go to the library. The internet is just, Google is just a library. It's all it is. And they've taken all of these websites and they have a system to categorize those websites, and then they index them onto the internet.
Awesome. So we could go on forever, but hopefully you guys out there took some things away. I mean, there's simple things. As you could tell, we're pretty passionate about it. That's why we are who we are. But just transitioning to that. So for you businesses out there that do need a website, may need some help, our Valor Cares initiative may be something that you would consider applying for. So Joe, as we wrap up, can you give us a last little word on our Valor Cares initiative, please?
Absolutely. So if you own a business and you're just looking to have a better presence online, starting with the foundation, which should be your website, you can go to, on our podcast, askvalormasterminds.com. There's going to be a page that talks about the Valor Cares program. Click, submit your information, and then a committee within the company chooses 1 to 2 winners every single month.
Awesome. Well, on behalf of our sponsors, A Advanced Septic Services and CR Gutters, Mick, thanks for joining us today on talking a little about SEO. A lot of things that people, it affects them, but they don't understand. So just some level of understanding is much appreciated. My name's Galen.
I'm Joe.
Coming at you from the BD Local Studios in Tacoma, Washington. Thanks for watching this episode of the Ask Valor Masterminds podcast. Thanks, guys.